Alright, hello everyone, welcome to a brand new section. Congratulations for getting this far. But we've got an even greater challenge ahead of ourselves now. So, what we're going to do here is, you see I've got our isolated head now. Now I do very much strongly recommend isolating the head into a completely separate Z tool, because with our costume now we've got millions and millions and millions of active points. So let's give ZBrush a little bit of a break and separate the Z tool now. So I've got the head here loaded up in the scene here. The neck looks suspiciously thin because it's been, well, shrunk to fit into the clothing better. So yeah, it is a little bit bothersome at the moment, but we now have the challenge of achieving a facial likeness. Okay, so that's what this section is going to be all about. But we need a little bit of prep work first, just before we get into 3D space. Now, ideally you would pick your muse, let's say. Yes, even 3D artists have muses. Okay, so I'm going to show you mine. And my muse is none other than Merlin's Lady Morgana, which is Katie McGrath. Okay, just because I feel like her particular face type and her particular, you know, obviously her unique form of beauty, is just going to really fit for this character here. Now, there's a bit of a disclaimer. Thank you, Bitdefender. There's a bit of a disclaimer here in the sense that we're not going to set out to make a, what can we say, a 100% likeness. We'll kind of achieve that first, but then I'm going to change the face up a little bit, perhaps to suit the character a little bit more. So, okay, so we're not just going to create a clone of Lady McGrath, but we're going to, sorry, Katie McGrath. I suppose you could call her Lady McGrath if you like. But we're going to be basically developing a likeness from her. So we're going to have to kind of do our best to recreate her in the first place, and then go ahead and actually adjust things from there. So you can see that I've just got a lot of different views and photos. I'll kind of a large VC and just go through them very quickly. They're just loose files, and you can see some of these files here, if I double click them, we just go to a loaded corruption file, which is a telling sign that I've recently suffered from file corruptions lately. So I can't stress this enough, do back up your files, guys, okay? But anyway, bad news out the way with here. Each of these pictures has a purpose. So, you know, if this is not your first time creating like a head sculpt or anything, it's obvious as to what these angles represent. We've got a nice side view here. Even though it's a little bit angled down, we can take it into account by rotating it to get a nice side view of her face. We've got a almost 3/4 side view of her face there, which is handy. We've got her face front on here with her hair taken back, so we get the full view of her jawline, which would be obfuscated by this photo here and that photo there, for example, where her hair sits long down either side of her face, so it kind of obscures just the overall shape of her face there. Okay, we've got some varying expression ones just to see how the eyes and the brows fit in a natural space, because it's quite normally, if you're going to take a photo, you're not going to have the most neutral expression. You're going to wear some kind of expression. So kind of getting a collection of images that show different expressions can help you figure out an average as to where all the facial features sit. We've got another one here, side on. 3/4 angle here has got, you can see a great outline of the overall shape of her face there, the contour of her face. We've got a 3/4 on the other side. I'll explain this file in just a minute. And luckily enough, for season 1 of Merlin, which is a good show, I recommend you go watch it, as she was dressed up as Lady Morgana, there were a lot of literally almost turntable like photographs of her in costumes, for example like this here. So you can sort of see that this is their front view, and all the other images that were somewhat corrupt now were just basically different angles, her rotating. But they also did the good job of getting up nice face close-ups as well. Okay, so you can see they're cycling through the different expressions. Okay, so we've got all sorts of different personalities and expressions coming through there, which can be handy even later on down the line when it comes to posing our character. Okay, but out of these face poses, like for example, there is an absolute magical key shot, and basically what that means is we've got a lovely side-on view of her face with no hair really kind of obscuring any of that kind of front part of her face, which of course is the unique part of everybody's faces. We're not worried about the scalp or anything like that too much. We want this part here, and it's so rare to get a photo that just has that on full display. Okay, now out of all these images here, I managed to collate 4 of them, which I believe are going to be the 4 key ones that we'll be using for this particular part here. And this is what this file is here, okay? So I call it the alignment file, but essentially what it is here is a bunch of photographs from the front 3/4, side, and another 3/4 if possible. Again, they're the golden 4 that you want for any kind of facial likeness recreation. You could argue you could get a 5th one, which is the other side if you like, but that's up to you. Okay, I generally don't tend to use that. But basically, if I was to draw a line now, I'm going to use a rectangle tool just because, and I just sort of pick the edge of the lines here, you'll be able to see that as I draw all the way across there, her eyes are more or less level across all 4 images. Okay, and you can do this for the other parts of her face. Like for example, we could sort of go for the bottom of her nose there, and you can see that's also roughly more or less aligned. We can go for the corners of her lips, that's roughly more or less all aligned. The bottom of her chin there, and maybe even the tops of her brows. Okay, the only discrepancy of course is being the perspective shift. For example, if the one of the shots was taken with a slightly different millimeter lens or what have you, there's going to be less and more distortion. And of course, she's a living being. She's going to have a few minor expression changes as she turns herself around for different shots. Okay, so we can't do any better than this essentially. Okay, now where do you find pictures like this? That's a very, very good question. It's just unfortunately just a lot of time scouring the internet for different images and all that sort of good thing. You know, Pinterest at this point in time doesn't really help out. I found that the Google image filters for things like filter for face, etc., doesn't really help. I'm afraid you're just gonna have to type in your muse's name, keep your fingers crossed that they've got at least a couple of these shots that you can work with. Okay, now for our particular beginning purposes right now, what we're going to need is we're just going to need the front and the side. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to go to File, New, and I'm going to create basically a square. So you can do whatever resolution you like. I'll just use a 1080 by 1080. Happens to be a social media square post, but whatever that is. And we'll go over back to this key shot area. And we'll take the First Lady Morgana layer. So this one here. We'll copy that and we'll paste it here. Okay. So, and let's just extend that all the way right to the edge. Okay, no problem, we'll center that. The reason why we want it a square is we want it to fit nicely, uniformly when we throw these references into ZBrush. And with it being a square, it's going to be a little bit more easy to do that with. It doesn't have to be, but the images should be the same aspect ratio, basically, to help out with that. Okay, now what we're going to take is we're going to take the side one. So I'm going to shift that box over and take the side one. Like so. I'm going to paste that in here as well and just do our best to line it up and extend it like so. Okay, just have a quick check to see if it's all sort of level. All the facial features are somewhat level. Okay, it's more or less there. Maybe a bit of a shrinking down like that. Okay, perhaps a little bit more here as well, just to kind of just looking at the different contours of the face here, that's all. And there we go. Okay, let's put that up to 100% again. Make sure you hold down shift when you drag it so that you don't kind of move it up or anything like that. They want to be level with each other as best as you can. And actually, I think what I'm going to do here, I always prefer working with the side view facing the other way. So I'm just going to go to layer and I just want to flip this around. Again, this is personal preference, so you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Arrange. Flip horizontal. Yes, there we go. So, this hide the side view, we'll go to File, and we're going to save this out. It can be a JPEG, it doesn't matter. We're going to save this out, I'm going to call it Front. And let's just go ahead here, we'll call it Face. Oh, we don't want caps locks. Face References. And we're going to call it Front in nice big capital letters. And we're going to do the same thing for the side. File, and you guessed it, we're going to call it Side. There you go. Okay, fabulous. With that done now, let's go ahead and we'll switch over to ZBrush. You might be thinking, what about the 3/4 views? Well, we'll get there in a minute, okay? So under our draw tab here now, I've got to make sure that the floor is active. It's very strange, but we do need the floor for some reason. We go to front, and we have the option here now to actually load in a map. Okay, so for the front and back, obviously we want to load in the front. So we're going to go to import. It's going to drop us somewhere absolutely meaningless. Oh, it didn't. Not too bad. Nearly there. Face references, and we want to drop in the front file. Okay, now the front file is all over the place here. It's completely kind of all over the shop. That's fine, that's no problem. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn off perspective. Okay, the reason being is because if you're going to do some resizing in perspective mode here, it's going to distort. You're never going to get the background image to line up with your head mesh features. Okay, so we've got to turn off perspective, and now we've got to go into draw, and we've got to change these sliders here to try our best to get Katie McGrath's face to more or less align with our head mesh. Okay, so just do this a little bit, and obviously we can't see behind the head, so we're going to have to change fill mode. You can do fill mode 3 is a good one to go for, and just keep adjusting at scale. And you can zoom in, that's fine, because under orthographic zooming in doesn't change anything, but we just got to do our best to sort of find the right alignment. And you can see it's a bit sticky sometimes, so you might have to type in some values. Let's do 0.25 scale, and let's go for minus 0.72. Nope, that's too low. 2474. So 0.74. Let's try 0.738. Okay, just that's the eyes lined up. Horizontal offset, let's try for 0.26. Not too bad, but the scale's a little bit off, so 0.26 for scale. Okay, now everything else is off. So this is just a bit of back and forth, a bit of trial and error to get it right. Unfortunately, there is no magic remedy for this. It's just a bit of back and forth until you get it right, essentially. Okay, so that's about as close as we're going to get to that. You can just play with a few sliders like the enhance factor just to kind of see there, and we can see that Katie McGrath's face is a little bit too big, so we're going to have to come down and maybe knock that 5 off. Nope, we'll probably have to drop that 6 down to a 5. That looks a bit better. Vertical offset, let's go a little bit higher. We'll go 735. And yes, I would say that's more or less okay. Looks like some of our features might have to just shift about a little bit. That's fine. So we got the features there kind of almost aligned. The mouth is a little bit higher, the eyes are a little bit lower, but the jawline does sort of fit there, and so do the ears, interestingly enough. Okay, anyway, don't worry too much about this factor here. This is not going to be the main kind of sculpting area here. So now we're going to flip over to the side, and you guessed it, we're going to bring in the side left and right, map 1, import, and we're going to import side. And now the nice thing about this is you can actually use some of the information here from the front to replicate the left and right, and that's what was the handy thing with having the image be a square, is that it's all the same aspect ratio, same size, so this should be the same numbers. So scale is 0.25. Okay, our horizontal offset, well actually our vertical offset's the one that we can use, is minus 0.735. So minus 0.735. Okay, now horizontal offset's going to be a completely unique value because obviously we haven't aligned it horizontally at all. So it's at 0.4 at the moment. Let's try 0.41. And well, more or less that looks not too bad. Let's take her hair off so we can see. Yeah, okay, so 0.41-ish. You can see there's already a discrepancy between the height of the last one of the front view and as opposed to the side view. So let's just try and take that into a bit more account. We'll maybe raise the vertical offset a little bit higher, 0.737. Okay, 738, because remember we did have that thing where it's just right on the chin there. Perhaps we can go to 7.4 even. 7.4. Okay, so the lips are a little bit higher than what we've got on our face. The eyes are a little bit lower. and the eye's a little bit lower there, and it's right on the chin line there. Okay, so that's about the best you can expect for this part here. Now what this is just essentially aimed at doing is just making sure that the side profile, more than anything else, kind of stays where it ought to be, okay, and that the eye lines and the mouth line and everything like that is more or less in the correct place. Now, disclaimer, it's not going to one-to-one create the likeness straight away. Why? Because two things. We're in orthographic mode, we're not in perspective mode, so it's going to be a little bit different. And second of all, there's a whole lot of difference between just these two left and front planes. Of course, you've got all that 3D space to contend with, which is where the 3/4 files come into play. Okay, but what we're going to do here for now is we'll leave this video here. We've done the setup there, so just get your muse lined up like this, if you like, as best as you can, and I've shown you there hopefully enough tools and techniques to be able to do this or well, to the best ability, essentially, depending upon your images. Your mileage may vary, okay, but get your character head to this state here, and the next video we'll actually start using this front and side view to actually start achieving some kind of a likeness.